Father Allen, welcome to the Unplanned Joyful Life podcast. I'm very excited to have you here today. I think this topic is one of the most important topics that I'll probably have on this podcast. But before we get started, I always like to hear about your journey of faith. So if we can start by you sharing your journey or testimony of faith, starting as a Christian, and then you can lead into your discernment and entering into the priesthood, if you don't mind.
Absolutely happy to do so, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I always love when the different connections that bring me together with the people all over the globe to be able to have these discussions and to be able to share, especially about the work that we're doing at Integrity Restored and on this topic. So I look very forward to all that we're going to unravel during this time. But my journey of faith, wow, we could take a whole podcast just to talk about that, but I'll keep it short. So. My mom and dad, they met when my mom was 13 and my dad was 16 in the local neighborhood. My dad grew up in a very loosely Lutheran household. His mother actually was a Catholic, fully initiated Catholic, but left the Catholic faith for my grandfather. And it was my dad who, again, really wasn't practicing much. Who started to see that my mom and her family did this thing on Sunday, and what was this all about? And he started to go, and he made the decision on his own, not by force or compulsion, to become a Catholic. And so he
Wow.
was received into the church. And then my parents were married on the younger side. So I think my mom was 20 when they got married, 19 maybe, and almost 20. And so it would have made my dad 23. And then I came along 2 years later. I have a sister who is 4 years younger than I and a brother who's 10 years younger than I. But my parents were both laborers, taught me a lot about good work ethic, and faith was always a part of our life. I can't say that we prayed a family rosary or anything like that, but Mass was a non-negotiable. Throughout my life, I never even had a thought of not going to Mass on a Sunday. I can honestly say, in my own recollection, there have been 5 times in my entire life that I've missed Mass, and all of them were due to severe illness that I wasn't able to get there. But Mass was always a focal part of our family. My dad was a CYO coach. He coached us all growing up, and Mass was a part of our team life and all of that stuff. So it was when I was in the fourth grade. There was a priest in our parish who had a tendency to say to the parents of the boys, especially if we were a little fidgety, coming out of Mass, listen, we have the application for him already filled out for the seminary. You just have to sign and we'll send him. And it caused me to look up to my mom and say, Mom, what's a seminary? And she said, that's where men go to training to be priests. And that was the first time the seed was planted. A year later, I
Wow.
became an altar server. And then after that, I had the blessing of having an incredible pastor growing up, Monsignor Joe Smith. God bless him. He just retired a second time. So he's 92 years old. He
Oh my
retired from our
goodness.
parish at 75, went back to the parish that he was prior to that, ministered from 2008 until just a few weeks ago, and retired a second time at 92, and now is living down at the beach with his sister. But Monsignor Joe Smith, great man. He's a saint in my eyes because his witness of priesthood was just something that always poured out, especially spiritual fatherhood, which I hold very important and actually has poured into a lot of why I have a passion for the work that I do as a priest, especially in this field and this area we're going to talk about today. So, he gave me the opportunity between my junior and senior year to be able to go to World Youth Day 2000 in Rome. And John Paul II was there. I'm a JP2 priest, and his just constant, don't be afraid of what Christ is calling you to. And that really led me to a place to embrace what the Lord was just putting on my heart. Thing was, I came back for my senior year. I was intent, you know what? I'm probably going to go to the seminary at the end of all of this. And I started the football season senior year, came out of that, and college scouts started coming around. And so you may not be able to tell from me sitting here, but I measure in at 6'4", 370, and I was recruited as a tackle out of high school, had a bunch of different offers, wound up going to a small D3 school very close to where our home is. Just the fit was right with the coach and everything like that allowed me to stay connected to my parish. And really the thing was, my parents who were laborers who sacrificed everything to put us through Catholic school and give us the best. The fact that I could go to school, get an education, and be able to play sports and get scholarship money for it, like this is a win-win. So this is what we
Awesome.
did. And it was actually third to last game of the season. I went and ripped up my shoulder, had to get surgery over Christmas break. Worst time of my life in terms of sleep, but also a blessed time to be able to use that sleep in such a way where I was able to really discern in a deeper way what the Lord was calling me to in my life. And I changed from asking the question, Lord, what do I want? And now it's, Lord, what do you want? And just this whole thing of the priesthood seminary just kept coming back. So I
Yeah.
left the college after my freshman year, enrolled in the seminary 7 years later in 2009, was ordained a priest. And 17 years now, almost. It's been an incredible ride, blessed beyond my wildest dreams. And the stuff that he has called me into, the opportunities that I've had, they have been many and varied and all graced. And so I
Wow.
am so thankful for the gift of the priesthood, for my spiritual fatherhood, and for all of the people who have been a significant impact of that along the way.
Wow. And when you say about spiritual fatherhood, you're
Mm,
could you just touch on that just a little bit, just so for our
yeah.
listeners?
Yeah, I think, one of the big things is I once had a kid when I was in high school work, and she came up, we were on a retreat, and she came up to me and she says, she says, I'm really blessed. And I said, how's that? And she says, I have three dads. And I'm thinking, what do I did this didn't come up in our conversations. Is there a stepdad situation or what's going on? She says, no. She says, I have my biological dad at home, or I think she said bio dad, my bio dad at home. She says, I have my father in heaven and I have you. And I
Oh,
was like, wow, that's really cool.
that's
But
so sweet.
as priests, we are called to be spiritual fatherhood. It was actually that priest, Monsignor Smith, who was my pastor growing up. I came to him once, and I had seen the reality of being a husband and a father as in opposition to being a priest.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know why God is calling me to both. And he saw this conflict in me, and he's listen. He said, if you came to me and said you thought that God was calling you to be a priest, but not a husband and a father, we would be having a completely different conversation. Because if you can't see yourself as married to a wife and having a few children, how are you going to be in deep union with the church, your bride, and also be a father to thousands and
Mm,
beyond thousands, tens of thousands,
wow.
hundreds of thousands? And I think I've been put in some amazing pastoral situations, and now in this work that I do with Integrity Restored, it's taken me not only all over the state, all over the country, but around the world.
Wow.
And even just the through the gift of technology, being able to be here, there, and everywhere on a global level,
Mhm.
in regards to this issue, has been a real blessing. So
Wow.
it all goes back to Christ, and I was just
Yeah.
reflecting on this last night with someone, how even in the most difficult times of human history, or for me in my life, where that's led me to a deeper place even in my priesthood in the last 17 years. And I was
Mhm.
reflecting on the blessing of COVID. Again, a
Mm,
lot of people won't say, hey, COVID was a
yeah.
blessing. But there are people, you talk to them, there were blessings along the way. People, because of maybe isolation, that they got to get closer to their family or a loved one or whatever the case, closer to the Lord in prayer because they
Hmm.
had the time to do it. But it really just took me to a deeper level of consideration of, who I'm called to be as an alter Christus, another Christ, which is
Hmm.
our identity as priests. And so
Wow.
I think that fatherhood, that the God the Father has for us, that God the Father has for the Son. So we are called to live out in our spiritual fatherhood as priests. And that means being sacrificial. That means everything that, a father does for his children, that we do for our spiritual children. And
Hmm.
that means every day waking up and putting our lives, our hearts out there in an other-centered way for the people who we serve.
Wow. So, what was the position you played again in football?
I was, and in college, I ended up as an offensive tackle. So I
Offensive
was a
tackle.
tackle both ways in high school and also a kicker. Played soccer before I played football, but ultimately, it was as an offensive tackle. So I had the width and the height to be able to justify the position. Would have if I wasn't in a small Catholic school in high school, I probably would have been a good tight end. But got into the weight room, threw some weights around, got some more bulk, and wound up being an offensive lineman. So we're actually really cool in the we're on your podcast, but we're in the process of starting a podcast that I'm going to be hosting, and it's called God's Lineman. And so
Oh,
it's all going to be about offense, defense, and special teams,
oh my
and being that
gosh.
lineman who is one going on offense against the evil one, defending the
Yes.
faith against untruth, and also there's tons of little neat niche things that
Yeah.
are in our faith. That's the special teams, and
Yeah.
so I just need to find the time to do it.
Yeah.
It's usually about time and money and manpower. Are the things. So
Yeah.
the manpower. My staff is texted out. My communications team does a lot already, and just the time. It's crazy.
Well, I
So
just
it's a
have to
blessing.
say, I'm really hoping to share this episode with my family, and they are big football fans.
Nice.
But as you were talking about your role as spiritual father, and all I could think of, um, you have like this very positive and strong energy about you, and knowing that you just described the size of you and being a football player. All I could picture is you being a protector for your family.
Hmm. Yeah,
So it
and
kind of
it
lends
was
what you're saying with the
it's funny. My football coach, when I came to him, we would talk from time to time, and he said to me, and one of the reasons I chose that school was because he was a great man and cared about us more than just as athletes or as football players, but as men,
mm,
and was really invested in our overall development. And he said to me, he says, I don't understand. He says, we have games on a Saturday afternoon. He says, you're here ripping guys' heads off, and then you go to church and you're all holy and pious. And I'm like, Coach, it's whatever people need me to be in that moment, that's what I'm going to be. So you need me to go rip heads off on a football field, I'm going to do it. The church needs me to be holy, and pious, and do that, I'm going to do it. So, you just gotta whatever you're being called to, the Lord gives you the grace to be able to do it.
you want to do it and then just do it the best you can, right?
Amen. Listen, we just had a staff meeting this morning, and my two favorite E words, excellence and efficiency. And
Oh,
so I strive for excellence in all that I do, and got to have high energy to do it. So the Lord,
yeah.
as long as He continues to give me the ability to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So I want to get into the topic of integrity restored
Yeah.
and why you are so passionate about it. So if you could tell us about integrity restored and then kind of how you got involved and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, it's really good. So, a large part of my priesthood in all these 17 years has been connected to Catholic education. For the first 7 years, I was a chaplain of our largest Catholic high school here in the Diocese of Allentown in Pennsylvania, and I loved it because as a parish priest, I love being a parish priest too, but. There was something for 5 days a week and even on the weekends being every day in the presence of 900 plus people versus in the parish, you catch people during the week at daily mass, you catch everybody at mass on the weekend, but it's just a different dynamic. And it was especially with young people where there being a world where there was lacking such guidance, especially in a Christocentric way, to be able to be that center of influence for them was really huge. And I remember dealing with a situation with one of the kids, and they came to me, and a student had made a bad decision with taking a video of themselves that they had been put up to do by a young man, and then it was wound up being shared out not only amongst students, but then subsequently it
Mm.
was shared out on the anonymous web and anonymous posting site,
Oh,
and my heart broke. Do you want to talk about one of those days as a spiritual father, like you're sick to your stomach because of what just happened to one of your kids? Like that was a day for me. And the Lord planted a seed that day of you have to do more. And then it was a year later. There's our parent organization for Integrity Restored is called Stewardship and Mission of Faith, founded by a great man in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, named David Abel. And David founded Stewardship, and then subsequently these different sub ministries that are under the stewardship umbrella, and Integrity Restored was one of them to address this issue of pornography. So a year later, after that student incident, a gentleman by the name of Rob Longo, who's a good friend who now has his own evangelization business ministry called Live Vertical. They're doing great things, especially with high school young people. He was working for David Abel at the time, coming into the school, doing evangelization with our kids. And he said, "Hey, he said, we're starting up this new ministry called Integrity Restored. Do you want to be a part?" And I said, "What is it?" He said, "We're going to go and take on the porn industry. Too many people's lives are being ruined by it." I'm like, "I'm in." And so it's going to be actually my 10-year anniversary on this incredible
Wow.
journey. Yeah, 10-year anniversary this spring on this journey. And all across the way, the Lord has blessed the work. And when Integrity Restored was first started, it first was the work and a book written by the clinician who is my colleague in this work, Dr. Peter Kloponis. He has a counseling practice that's a Catholic-based counseling practice here in Pennsylvania called Integrity Counseling Services. And he was in sort of just general family psychology practice, and then he started to see this repetition of this pornography issue over and over and over again. So he went back. He got his CSAT, clinical sexual addiction therapist designation, and did all the training for that. And now their practice, I think they're up to seven clinicians, spiritual directors in addition to that, and they need more people
Wow.
because the work that they're doing, especially now that we can do telehealth and stuff like that. There are just so many different situations where people are coming to him, and there's other like people. Here in our diocese, we make sure that our priests are equipped with counseling clinical services to be able to help, and it's all over the place because we need all of those people. But Dr. Kloponis first started, and then he got connected with David Abel, and they said, "Hey, can we name this ministry Integrity Restored?" So we have an executive director. His name is Jim O'Day, and we've connected and partner with all different types of organizations. We're one piece in a larger collage of people who are addressing this. So we work with Fight the New Drug, which is a really great source. We've Covenant Eyes, who I'm an affiliate with, Defend Young Minds, and the list goes on and on. Road to Purity. There's just a lot of great people out there who are picking up this mantle of fighting against this evil of pornography. So when we first started, one of the biggest things that David wanted to accomplish and that we were tasked with was training priests. Because for a lot of people, especially Catholics, the first place that they're going to find that place to come to and acknowledge their problem is on a level of sin in the confessional. And we were finding that priests were not having the tools that they needed to be able to respond to this.
Mm.
So they started what we called the clergy intensive, which was a 4-day, morning till night intensive with the best psychology, neurobiology, also the spirituality, the sacraments, the accountability, and the relationship building that was needed to be able to help men and women, because it's a growing issue in women. But we deal a lot with more men who are the users. But again, women we work with as well. And we started to work with the priests to train them. Well, then COVID comes along. And one of the things that we saw even around that time was that priests were so busy that they weren't able to even carve out the time during the weekdays to get to a 4-day intensive. So back in 2023, we put our hand to the plow, if you will, went into studio and created 3 pillars to purity, which is our online asynchronous program.
Mm.
And the 3 pillars are exactly what I described. It's the good science, so the psychology and the neurobiology. It's the sacramental life and spirituality. And then it's the relationship and accountability piece. And those 3 things come together where these priests are able to have the best training possible to be able to respond. And it's even being broken out that honestly, people are signing up beyond priest too because they're so interested in, listen, this is not the typical as people view the church, puritanical wagging finger to say you just did something sinful. We're
Right.
invested in the healing and restoration work. So we look at the prevention and education piece, the intervention, and also the healing. And it's
Hmm.
healing for both those who are using and those who are affected by the user's use. So we do, that's our niche in the ministerial part. We do coaching, we get people connected to counseling, and all of those different things and inform. But then, like for instance, I talked about our partners. Covenant Eyes has the monitoring software. When you look at Defend Young Minds, they're the ones who are constantly screening the apps and the stuff that's going on online,
Hmm.
especially in protecting kids.
Hmm.
Fight the New Drug is, looking at, all different types of aspects of this too. So we all have a lot of work because this is not a dwindling problem, unfortunately. We're slowly creeping up and educating more people, but
Hmm.
we need more of us and we need more people to have the courage. And I think that I always take this as a moment when I talk about courage, whenever it first comes up, is to give big props to my bishop. Because
Hmm.
this is a topic that I could talk about for a long time, and we're going to actually get into this about where this problem came from and what
Hmm.
we're facing moving forward. But from day one of all of this, my bishop, Bishop Alfred Schlert, which a lot of people, people know Bishop Robert Barron, people know, Cardinal Dolan, people know, the big name bishops. They don't know who, other than if you're in the Diocese of Allentown, you don't know who Bishop Alfred Schlert is. But I'll tell you this much. He is one of the most courageous bishops in the United States of America and in the
Hmm.
Catholic Church today. Because from day one, when this was brought to him that one of his priests could be a part of this and that we were going to do this work, even starting a commission in our diocese solely devoted to the issue of pornography, he has never flinched once. He has
Hmm.
been in full support, and that is far more than I can say for a lot of priests and bishops in the world today, because there are
Hmm.
so many of them who will not address this issue, who are scared to address this issue. And I am so thankful that I have a bishop and have been blessed with a bishop in God's good providence who has been
Yeah.
behind me 100%.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Could you remind me the name of the program that includes the three pillars that you said the priests do, but
So,
then other people can?
yep, it's Three Pillars to Purity. So
Okay,
it
three
has its own
pillars.
website, threepillarstopurity.com. So three spelled out, TO, three pillars to purity.com. And
Okay.
it's a phenomenal program. There's trailers on there. Again, it's asynchronous, so you take as much time as you want, and it's really, really good stuff. So we've actually seen a number of different dioceses across the world. We reach as far as the diocese of Wagga Wagga in Australia. I always say to people, anybody know where the diocese of Wagga Wagga is? They're like, is that like northwestern United States? Like, no, it's in Australia. But
Awesome.
we're in that diocese, and we're reaching all over the world with this. But really, what it comes down to is the ability to be able to, get these priests educated. And some dioceses, like our diocese, the Diocese of Harrisburg, right next door, the bishops just came in and said, "Listen, out of all the money that we're going to spend this year on our priests, the best thing that we can do is get them all licenses for this program." And so
Wow.
that's what they did. Others say, "Listen, continuing ed, if you want this, we'll pay for it. Go there." Some have done a small group that they can then become like trainers for their brother priest. There's all
Hmm.
different ways, but all that matters is that dioceses, bishops, priests are doing something about it, because
Right.
just to glaze over it in the confessional, to become punitive about it in the confessional, we're not doing the Lord any
Yeah.
favors in the work that he's trying to do against Satan's evil. And so it's really important to address this in the right way.
It's funny because I feel like as far as like podcasts and YouTubers and stuff like that, I feel like Matt Fratt, are you familiar with him from
So
Pints of
Matt Fradd used to be
Aquinas?
with us in our
Okay,
inception at Integrity
okay. Because he's
Restored.
from Australia, right?
Matt Fradd was with us, and then Matt went and did his own thing. Definitely a good thing, because he, has to support his family and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Pints with Aquinas, what he goes around, the different books he's written and stuff like that. But in our books that we put out through on this topic and stuff, Matt and Cameron, his wife, they are their books are out there, just like the Everetts. So there's a lot of great stuff. Matt Fradd
Awesome.
has been a real champion, but then again, and I think that that's the thing. Like, we live in this world where, oh, if we're going to have Father Hoffa come and speak, all he's going to do is say porn, 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 porn. No, 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 no. There is a wide variety of things, but a lot of it does come back to this issue of,
Yeah.
again, fight the new drug. This is the main drug. This is the thing. When we talk about, we want holy families, we want holy marriages, we want holy priests and sisters,
Hmm.
and men religious. If we want all of that, this is the issue that we have
Yeah.
to address first. But even beyond that, if we want, for instance, sex trafficking to stop at the
Yep.
border, We have to stop the porn industry. Two
Yep.
thirds of the supply and demand for people being trafficked is the porn industry.
Yeah.
So there are so many different intricacies and interconnections that are
Yeah.
happening in the world today, and so that's why this is a big thing. So when we talk about, getting this out to people, we've even told people, hey, you want to go get your priest a really good Christmas present or a birthday present or an anniversary present? Get them three pillars of purity. Or if you know people who are out there in the mental health world, get them this information because it's going to make a big difference in their life.
Wonderful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
giving the tools to know how to deal with it.
Amen.
Yes. Incredible. Um, could you share with us some statistics just so listeners can get an idea of like really what's going on?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What if I said to you, age of first exposure, average
Age
age of
of
first
first
exposure,
exposure?
average age of first exposure to
Oh,
pornography in the time in which we live?
I will tell you what I would say, but I think it might be even younger because of like technology and everything. My first thought is 12 years old.
Some people hold to that, but what we hold to, and it's again the stats and the surveying and stuff, is 8, 9 years old. So
Okay.
that's a third and a fourth grader. So I
Okay.
was at a
Yeah.
teacher's convention and I had all my stuff. And one of the things that I have is a sticker that comes from a company that we've connected with, and it says "porn is lame" on it. And it's all like, bright colors and stuff. And so you get these teachers, they're like, "Oh, I want free things." So they come over and she's about to pull one out, and then she looks at it and it says "porn is lame" on it. And she's like, "Oh," she puts it back. I said, "No, no, no, you can take it." And she goes, "Oh no, I couldn't put that up in my classroom." And I said, "Why not?" She says, "Well, I teach third graders." I said, "And?" Well, what happens if they would go home and look up the word porn because I had it on my thing? Well, hopefully, one, their parents would have the protections on their devices and on their network to make sure that that didn't happen. But
Mhm.
number two, let me ask you this in a different angle. Do you have the dare posters up in your school against drug abuse? Yeah. Well, aren't you worried about them going home and looking at the word drug or abuse and finding out, pictures or things about drugs and abuse? Because I'll tell you what, here's the difference. The cartels aren't trying to get third and fourth graders hooked on drugs, but you know what the porn industry is. So if a
Mm,
child can pronounce the multisyllabic word pornography, then the porn industry is trying to get them hooked because the
mm,
younger that they get them hooked, they win. And it is creating trauma in these children. It is creating so many different sexual development problems. We talk about all the concerns we have, with what's going on with, same-sex attraction, with transgender ideology. Porn industry is playing a huge part of it because these
mhm,
kids are getting traumatized by these things, and then they think that they have arousal because of it, and they're absolutely confused. But if they're getting aroused at transgender porn, same-sex attracted porn, that's what I am then because I got aroused because of it, and they're getting caught into this web of complete destructive thinking that is
mm,
harming them for their maturation and their development. That by the time that they get into even puberty and into dating relationships and things, their
mhm,
world has been completely corrupted. So that's
mm,
the first premise we have to start out with is the average age of first exposure is 8 and 9 years old.
mm.
You want to talk about some dollars? $13 billion industry per year in the United States alone, $100 billion across the globe per year. You know what they
Wow.
do in third world countries? They get porn magazines and they put them in big crates and they airdrop them from helicopters
Oh
in the
my
middle
God.
of places, and people come and take all these magazines and they get hooked on porn. It is again the drug of choice, the new drug. We fight the new drug. It's this
So
because
I'm just
again,
wondering if in
yep.
a third world country, like how is that benefiting the industry to,
Because what they're doing is it's the thing of, okay, well, just think about drugs. Think about drugs when get into communities that are impoverished. What will they rather choose? Spending money
mm,
on drugs or spending money on food or on
mm,
clothing or on housing?
wow,
They're going to
wow.
go and spend it on the thing that they're addicted to. So the addictive quality of porn, these folks are going to go and choose, to whether it's, whether it's over sexualization. So then you get people into, having all kinds of promiscuity. Then, you talk about how they want to solve the problem with the spread of AIDS in, especially over in Africa and stuff like that. Well, again, when people aren't controlling themselves because they're addicted to sex because of pornography, it's just a vicious cycle. And we talk about,
Mm-hmm.
so many of these different vicious cycles.
Yeah.
So if they get them hooked, they know that they're going to choose this above the common,
Yeah.
necessities of life.
Two of the
Um,
things that kind of come to mind to me is that I've read that a lot of times when people are engaging or become addicted, what they get excited at, like they want something more abnormal or something that, and like it may not have
we
been
call that the
children to
degrading
start,
funnel.
but now it's not enough just to see like a regular aged woman. Now it's a
Normal
child.
porn, right?
Okay,
So
okay.
if you go and interview people who are in prison for child pornography, for
Hmm.
instance. Okay, what we would consider, people who aren't wrapped up in porn would say that is a grave atrocity against children. 100% it is. But
Hmm.
if you talk to people who are in prison for child porn, when they first started looking at porn or got over sexualized, they were looking at quote normal porn, heterosexual sex. But then that degrading funnel kept going deeper and deeper to the point where they needed something to keep hitting that dopamine high. This is why we get into the science side and the neurobiology and the dopamine and the oxytocin and the chemical dumps and all of these things. When they need that next hit or that dopamine high, when they go into it, that's when they get to themselves seeing that, oh, child porn, is the next hit that I need to keep it
Mm-hmm.
going. And they can be when a person, however long ago was when they first got into it, would have said that's awful. Now they're saying, what's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with this.
Mm-hmm.
And they've made all those rationalizations so that they can get that fix
Yeah.
that they need. So it is the degrading. It's the same way, gateway drugs versus people who get into hardcore drugs. You're
Hmm.
looking for that next high, that next hit that's going to take it to the next level, and it degrades.
And I also think of bribery with politics and things like that when you're thinking of like the Epstein files and things like
Hmm.
why those things were happening and like what does abusing these women and putting certain people in these positions that can be used later on against them. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of that, that's another thing that kind of comes to mind. There was a movie that is it Gruffalo?
Ruffalo?
Did you ever see that movie? It's about porn addiction.
Mm, I'm trying to
Um,
think.
Yeah, I have to try to find the name of it and send it to you because
Okay.
it's the only movie I ever saw that was about it. And it really gave you the idea of how out of control he got. Like, um, he even kind of was like withdrew from it for a while and started getting into a regular relationship. But then once it started back again, it just like was a
Yeah.
horrible spiral. Like,
Yeah.
um, and I
It's
know
been it's been amazing the more and more courage that there has been of people in Hollywood to talk about like porn addiction problems and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And people who are also know of its grave danger and are fighting against it. And even you talk about like the political side, one of the thanks be to God, I was just blessed back in this past July to be in Washington, D.C. at the USCCB offices, and their marriage and family life office did a program or a series called Love Means More, and I was on the uh, Claire Morell is the woman's name. She wrote the amicus brief for a Supreme Court case that was Paxton versus FSC. So Paxton is the Attorney General in the state of Texas, and FSC is the Free Speech Coalition. Now, someone may think, oh, Free Speech Coalition, like ACLU or something like that. Huh, one might think, but smoke and mirrors. The FSC is the lobby arm of the porn industry. So
Mm.
they went after Texas because of the law that they had put in place for age verification for pornography websites in the state of Texas. And I think we're up to maybe 24 or 25 states in the United States who have now strong age verification laws for pornography because they've seen about the damage that, the pornography
Mm.
is doing to these children. And the thank God, right before we had this recording, the Supreme Court ruled on the side of Paxton, which is good because it's opening the door for it to be a federal law, a codified federal law instead of just state by state.
Mm.
But one of the big things that we saw in all of this is that there are, the porn industry. puts that $100 billion into the lobby as well. They put it into the marketing and into the clickbait.
Wow.
But it's good that states are fighting back, and that there are other things that are progressing on the federal and state level that is working to make porn labeled as a public health crisis, because
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what it is.
It is.
I think it is Japan. I think Japan has put a complete block on pornography because they saw not only marriage rates but birth rates going down
Mm.
because of that internalization and that lack of sexual relationship between two persons. And
Wow.
the only one of the things that is sort of new on our radar and is really making a huge difference in a negative way is AI. Because
Mm.
now people with AI, they're saying they're getting relationship that they need, and they don't have to leave their home because of all this
Mm.
stuff with AI, even to the point of people getting, body parts and things like that printed to remember or to resemble a human person. And, with the AI integration into it, that this is, all that stuff that we used to watch on sci-fi movies 20 years ago, it's coming true,
Mm-hmm.
because we're at times not being responsible with technology and with
Mm-hmm.
the invent of new opportunities to understand that if it is offensive to the natural law and natural order of things, and doesn't truly benefit the human person in a way that is life-giving instead of life stunting, then
Mm-hmm.
we probably shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so even though, I mean, maybe, listeners could kind of, gather why it's such a problem, but I want to hear from you. What is it that specifically that you feel like it makes it a big problem?
Hmm. Well, here's the thing. One, it's evil and it's insidious. So this has been a new thing that I've been speaking when I've been going out, to different places and doing parish missions or different speaking things. It's the devil's long range plan. God has a long range plan for us, and it's to get to heaven. Satan has a long range plan as well, and it's to destroy us. And he's been at this for decades. So one of the things that, I always say humanity and history have a way of fixing itself. And so I would say that, over these past years, maybe the past 25 years, the first quarter of this century, it's not been a great time for humanity because we've been into this relativism, this selfishness, but it just didn't start at Y2K. It started actually, in my personal belief, after World War II. Satan looked at humanity after World War II, and just take, for instance, our country. And what he saw was that human beings were willing to go to the point of sacrificing and suffering and dying for their fellow man. Greater love hath no man than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends, or the stranger, or a fellow American. And Satan saw this and he said, I need to attack this willingness to sacrifice, and I need to make them focus more on themselves than
Mm,
on the good of others. And so what you have is the seeds starting to be planted for the sexual revolution. And at the same time, while seeds were being planted in the lives of, people for the sexual revolution, Satan also looked at the church and he said, I have to strip the church of its credibility when it comes to having a voice regarding this issue. And so he started to go after the church's leadership, its clergy. And
mhm,
so all the stuff with the sexual clergy sexual abuse crisis, this is where Satan started, and why Satan started to corrupt the clergy in getting them to commit crimes against children and just sexual crimes in general, immoral crimes, immoral acts, because he knew that this would create a weakening of the moral foothold that the church would be able to have in society. And so all of these things continued, 50s into the 60s, into the 70s, and now the sexual revolution is full blown. Yes, the church wasn't lost and it will never be lost because it's Christ's church. But at the same time, there were clergy and religious who fell into these actions that were sinful and criminal and all of these things because, again, it was all incited by the evil one. And so then of course, you had, the objectification of the human person and the sexual act in pornography. And it was coming out more in, again, magazines and, videos, you had to have a VHS or something like that. Then comes the internet. And I can remember when I was in middle school, back in the mid and early 90s, or mid and late 90s, That was when, again, they had dial-up internet, and it was when internet pornography was first coming out. So you have about, 30 years of the building up of this presence of it being free. We talk about the 5 A's when it comes to pornography of why it's the new drug of choice. It's anonymous, it's affordable, it's accessible, accepted, and aggressive. And those 5 A's are what make it the new drug of choice in comparison to all the other things that you can get addicted to just on the affordability level because the internet makes it free. And you say, well, wait a minute, if it's free, how is it $100 billion industry worldwide? Well, because sponsorships, because again, for that dopamine high, people who do pay for it to be more specialized. Look at all of the money that people are talking about that people are making off of this OnlyFans, and going around
Mm,
and having people that they can ask to do certain things, that again, is inducing some type of sexual high, and things like that. It's really just it's massive. The free stuff is just the bait to get you hooked. Then you
hmm
get into the specialized stuff that gets you addicted. And it just becomes this thing. But if we live in this morally relativistic world that says all of this is okay, we're continuing to fool ourselves because more and more people are finally coming to wake up and say, something's been wrong in my life. I can't hold a relationship. My relationships are all empty. I'm using people, I'm objectifying people. And it's brought us to the current issue of where we don't talk about that. And that's something that's been built over time. We had champions. We had champions like Paul VI with Humanae Vitae. We had champions like John Paul II with theology of the body. And those things are still great tools for us to use as church. But it's about changing culture where we say that the objectification of the person and living a life lived for myself versus lived for others. There's something wrong when I objectify another human being. There's something wrong when I'm just about myself. And
hmm
we need to challenge people back to a place where what is the objective truth and what does a life lived for another mean? It means that I'm fully living love. And there's
hmm
one of the biggest pieces that we can do is get back to an authentic understanding and living of love.
hmm
What it looks like, how it's lived out, and making sure it's at the center of the conversation of relationship. And that relationship is also something that is the core of God and our connection to God, not just a blind or a functional or a robotic faith, but a lived faith that is relational between us and the Lord,
hmm
and that in that relationship, it is taking us to a deeper and deeper place of love, especially again in this
hmm
season of Lent where we're focusing on the crucifixion. Jesus died on the cross not for himself, but for us,
hmm
giving of himself in sacrifice, redemptive suffering.
hmm
All of these things are at the core of the Christian message, at the core of the church, the gospel message, and we need to bring those things into the sphere of everything that we do so it guides everything that we do. And when we do that, we see that things like pornography have no good quality or value to them.
hmm
Now, what we need to do also is, as humanity, as the church, we need to be willing to be courageous about the incredible gift and teaching that we have about the gift of human sexuality. That is something that is so essential. And, I always say as I go out and give priests courage to speak about this, preach about this. So, listen, fellas, I've been doing this now for 10 years. Never once has the Pope, the nuncio, my bishop, the vicar for clergy gotten a call to say, hey, there's something wrong with this Hoffa guy. He's a pervert. He's running around talking about porn all the time. No one ever. But I've given my cell phone out to people all over the globe. And I'm going to throw it down right now since it came up. 610-207-3441. That's my cell phone number. I've gotten people from all over the country and all over the globe connected a lot of time to podcasts, and they wound up calling in. They're like, Father, I got a problem. I know someone who has a problem. Listen, we'll get you connected with the services that we can. And a lot of times it just is dependent upon, uh, the person's willingness to get the help that they need. But I've been blessed to be able to be a voice for this over the past 10 years. And there's others. I'm not the only priest doing this. My colleague in this work, who I learned a lot from, who trained me, Father Sean Kilcawley, he's now out on the West Coast. He's a priest of the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska. But, priests who are willing to really go out there and be courageous about this.
hmm
the two of us are the only two that I know that do it to the level that we do it. And we need more guys. We need
Yeah.
more, and we need more bishops like my bishop to be able to do this because we need this problem to stop. But it's
Hmm.
not a problem that can only be addressed by a few people and can only be addressed randomly. It's not the only problem that we address, but
Right.
we have to see it as the major offense against all of these other good things that we want to happen because it is holding the church, it is holding Christ back from doing what he could be doing in people's lives.
It's interesting because you mentioned about our call to love, and not only does it kind of reverse the process of like if you are in a relationship, it's like you get to know each other, you go through a process, and then the sexual intimacy is something that comes later on when the trust has been built. But not only is this reversing, and really in society in general, they even like media encourages like sex with multiple partners and stuff, but not only are they reversing the natural order of a relationship, but they're distorting that love and the relationship also. And so it's kind of hard for people then to eventually even get to that point because of the distortion and the effects of that, right?
Well, one of the biggest things that comes up, and that, because of the work that I do, I'll get people of every age, more comfortable to come and talk about, those hard questions, that sometimes other priests will glaze over because, again, clergy sexual abuse crisis and stuff like that, and again, I don't make light of that. I'm just done with it. I am not going to be shackled by Satan
Mm,
and
mm,
his manipulation of the sins of some of my brethren to stop me from doing what I need to do in fidelity to the Lord.
good
So
for you.
I
Yes.
never ever minimize, what victims have gone through. There are crimes, it is sin, it is evil, and it needs to be dealt with. But we have a whole other part of this that we can't be held back from this. We need to continue to move forward.
Yep.
And so people will come up and they'll ask me, and one of the common questions that comes up a lot is people will ask me, Father, how do I know if, the intimacy the physical intimacy that is being, cultivated between, me and my significant other, my fiance, my spouse. And again, I always clarify, again, sex is meant for marriage and sexual
Hmm.
acts meant for marriage. But I say, here's the big thing. Here's the way to tell whether it's love or lust. When it happens, if it's about you, it's lust. If it's about them, it's love. And
Hmm.
that's it. If we lived in a society about that, in that very simple way, that of, again, being about other centered in everything that I do, self-gift in everything that I do, including everything of physical intimacy, the gift of my sexuality, you're going to find yourself happier. You're going to find yourself in better relationship. And because your sexual life, along with every other part of your life, is going to be lived out in the way that it was created to be lived out. I always go back to the National Eucharistic Congress and the final night of Bishop Barron's talk, and when he talked about the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and he talked about chastity under the aegis of love. And when he talked about, that chastity and the aegis of love, he talked about in this beautiful way of, the ability to give yourself in love to another. And, all of these crimes and offenses that are against chastity and are against love, but it's about ordering your heart in the right way. And we live in a world so often that tells young people, every person, you have to take care of you because no one can take care of you better than you can. And that's a lie because, first of all, that is putting God at a supreme disadvantage because no one can take care of us better than God, including ourselves. But then, in addition to that, it's also about the gift of relationship. Multiple people loving us is going to be more than we can ever love ourselves as an individual person. And in loving another person, it is the village that raises the child. It's the family that loves the person, and there's always going to be more love than that. So we have to do a lot to speak truth to the lies and to the evil that is out there in the world.
Okay, rather than everything being about me and what makes me happy and what makes me feel good and what my
100%.
my truth is, that kind of
Yep.
thing. Okay.
Now, the other thing that that necessitates is that it's mutual. So you can't
Yeah.
have it lopsided where you're constantly giving to the other person and they're not giving back to you. There has to be a check and balance that it's mutual. But when it's mutual, it's absolutely beautiful and it's
Mm-hmm.
life-giving and it's everything. It's Trinitarian. It's
Mm-hmm.
I love that could be a whole nother podcast of talking about the
Mm-hmm.
Trinitarian implications of how love is supposed to be nuptial language, the unity in the church and the Trinity and all those things. So maybe
Yeah.
we'll do that on another
I'm
time. But
picturing the
this
three-leaf clover right
on
now
St.
on St.
Patrick's Day,
Patrick's
there you
Day,
go.
right?
Yep.
And again, I feel like you did touch on this. Like, what do you see being the answer to this problem? It seems like education and awareness and legal, from what you've shared so far, um, you know, laws being created and protections being created. Is there anything kind of in a nutshell that you feel would be the answer to this?
You know, here's the thing. I go back to, like one of the great examples is cigarettes. Everybody knew that cigarettes were doing damage to people before the Surgeon General's warning came out and people started dying from lung cancer. But
Hmm.
even so, with the Surgeon General's warning, people still smoke, and
Right.
because again, it has addictive properties. Well, it's the same thing with this. The problem is our we know more. We're more educated now, especially in the areas of science. Our theology and our teachings have been 2,000 years old and have been consistent and steady. But we rise to meet the challenges of the current age. Are we going to wait for more and more marriages? Over 50% of marriages are destroyed in part by pornography. So we talk
Oh.
about, these the divorce rates and stuff like that. Porn's a huge contributor to that. On a
Hmm.
church level, I know in our diocese, I think it's 1/3 of the tribunal cases for annulments that are coming through. Pornography, major issue. People coming into
Mm.
lying about. We just got, I actually have it right here. It's fresh off the press here in my diocese. We have the Lumen Christi Commission, which is our commission battling against pornography. So the light of Christ, very timely, especially as we approach Easter. But
Hmm.
one of our projects, there's this document that's called the prenuptial inquiry that's done with a couple as they're preparing for marriage. And we used to have a question in there that says, "Do you have a history of drug or alcohol abuse or any other addiction?" And through the work that our commission has done, we've now changed that the it's been that question has been split into two. And the first question is, do you have a habit or history of drug, alcohol, or pornography use? And the second question, are you or someone who knows you concerned about your usage of drugs, alcohol, or pornography?
Mm.
Because that, drugs and alcohol, yeah, is still big threats, but pornography, bigger threat, much bigger
Hmm.
threat out there in the world. So
Well.
I think the more that we bring it into the common parlance, that we equip people with the knowledge of its grave harm and its grave threat, and that we have those who are in leadership willing to take up the mantle, and especially this thing of, it's so interesting. So people, it's really weird. I go out to places. I was just at the bank the other day, and this young woman behind the counter, she said, "You're the priest on TikTok, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, yes, I am." And they said, she followed. She said, "My cousin loves your TikToks," and it's been really neat what we've been able to do. So our youth ministry here at the parish, HGA Youth Ministry, and my handle is at Padre Hoffa. We do these TikToks, and it's brought a number of people to the sacraments. We did one for
That's
Ash Wednesday,
awesome.
6.3 million views.
Wow.
We did one on confession where in 5 seconds I told people to go to confession 3 times, 4.5 million views. Like
Wow.
wild stuff. But like when you're doing that type of thing, it's about there's going to be sin in the world. Satan is going to be in the world. Satan is not going to be conquered until the second coming of Christ. Okay.
Hmm.
And so we could either sit there and put a lot of time into trying to eliminate Satan, or we could try to push the volume of God over the volume that Satan is
Mm.
inundating the world with. And so when it
Hmm.
comes to things like social media, when it comes to the conversation about sex and sexuality, let's raise the volume of the truth and teachings about the church to be able to bring that in so that what Satan offers pales in comparison to what people are willing to talk about the church. And I think that that is a
Hmm.
real change in
Yeah.
the dynamic of what people do because so many people they're like I forget I made a presentation somewhere and a person said I was saying about how one of the things in which the porn industry $100 billion industry per year worldwide ads and different stuff like that, and this person wanted to say to me, Father, can we get a list of all the companies that advertise on porn sites so that we can boycott them? And I'm like, okay, like nice thought and all that, but that's not going to be your answer. What I need you to do is spend your time, instead of trying to boycott these, I need you to go and open your mouth and with an educated mind and tell more people, because that is going to be time well spent than you trying to follow
Hmm.
a website to find out companies that you should boycott because they put an ad on a porn site. You're really not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to clothe yourself. You're not going to be able to drive a
No.
car or anything else because all of these companies are immersed in so many different
Wow.
ways of this web, and it's with anything. I
Right,
would much
right.
rather spend. I'm a quality, a quality over quantity type of guy, but the quantity, it comes in terms of time. What is the quality and quantity of the time that I'm using? And I would much rather go and flood people's minds with the truth so that it overwhelms the lies that Satan puts out there. So I think that's
Hmm.
the biggest thing that people can do. And I think, again, from a leadership perspective in the church, it is something that is so essential for our clergy and bishops to do, and that let that pour into the lives of the faithful.
Yeah, and you're actually targeting more like the potential victims immediately. Like if you're speaking about it, rather than it does seem like an overwhelming feat. And like you said, there's so many involved. Like where would you even start?
Yep.
But whether they're doing it or not, communicating to the people that are making the choices of whether to do this in their lives or where to get the help, that's really going to make the change.
Well, and I think the other thing too is making sure that everybody understands. Listen, this problem is affecting everyone, young,
Hmm.
old, male, female. Again, porn was always, was thought of more as a men's issue. It's rising in females. The number of the rise in self-image issues, eating disorders are on the rise again because these women are trying to keep up with, the women that men are looking at, and they want to look the same. One of the big things is too on the men's side, urologists are starting to come out more and more and talk about erectile dysfunction. When you consider the fact that, 25 years ago maybe was when Viagra first came out and Cialis after it. Now there's so many drugs on the market for erectile dysfunction, but if you look at their ads, they're not trying to appeal to men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're advertising men who are in their 20s and 30s. Why are they having erectile dysfunction in their 20s and
Mm,
30s? Because they've been addicted to porn since they've been 10, and they
mm,
can't achieve an erection for a human being, but they can for something on a screen. And so these
mm,
women are trying to keep up with, what men want to look at and see, and in the process they wind up trying to compare themselves, and they wind up getting hooked on the porn at the same time. And
mm.
I think the other thing that is important, so children, male, female, young, old, any situation of life. But the other thing too is understanding that there's huge effect on those who are connected to the user, because the user's use affects people. And I think it's important to note one of the things that I've gotten connected to in this ministry is an affiliate that we have that's called You Are Made New Ministries, and also Hope's Garden. And the work that those women do over at You Are Made New Ministries and Hope's Garden, and also Men of Hope, which is the male part of it of Hope's Garden, um, there are so many people who are living in such pain. And again, not to stereotype, but it is the reality just percentage wise. There are so many women who are living in complete betrayal trauma because of their husband's use of pornography, and how that has manifested into domestic violence, sexual assault, the amount of rape that is happening in marriage, not
Wow.
outside of marriage, in marriage. Women who are finding themselves sexually assaulted by their husbands because the husbands are trying to recreate what they watched on porn it's sickening. And
Mm,
there are so many women who suffer in silence. And I'll leave you on that topic because again, all of these things we could do a
Yeah.
whole podcast on. So maybe we'll be back for a couple more,
Yeah.
and I'll bring some friends with me. But one of the things that I say to women is, and this is where the church, this is why it's important for us to educate priests. We found this issue where there are priests out there who are just preaching to women who have been in these abusive marriages, in these neglectful marriages that once you're married forever. The church believes in the indissolubility of marriage. You're right, but that is with certain caveats, and the biggest thing is that there is mutual love between persons.
Hmm.
And when there is not, you really don't have a marriage. So you're not divorcing yourself from a marriage, you're divorcing yourself from something that isn't marriage. And
Mm,
I say to women, God calls you to sacrifice. There is suffering that is a part of sacrifice, but God does not call you to suicide. And when you're in
hmm.
a relationship where a piece of you is dying day by day because of neglect, because of abuse, God does not call you to that. And
Hmm.
so, if you have a spouse who is not willing to correct the error of their ways, who is not willing to stop the abuse, who is not willing to stop the addiction, to take the means to get help and to get healing, God's not calling you to remain there. And again, I don't
Hmm.
say that flippantly because I believe in the indissolubility of marriage too. But there have been a number of times now in my priesthood where I've had to counsel many times a woman to say, enough is enough. You need to get out. And I do
Hmm.
that with a lot of weight on my shoulders, but
Hmm.
I know it is the right thing to do because I know for a fact that God was not calling that woman to suffer in that way where she
Hmm.
is constantly being abused and mistreated and all of these horrible things that happen in these marriages where for
Hmm.
instance pornography has become the thing that rules that man's life instead of for his wife being constantly in his heart.
Wow. That's really very insightful, and it's good for people to hear because like you said, there's so many people that are in marriages and relationships, and then I mean, and that's a part of your relationship that's only between you and your spouse. So nobody's going to see that. Nobody's going to know about that but you. And then to have somebody abusing you in that way, yeah, like God doesn't call us to be abused that way, and to think that that is, acceptable. So there's five different topics that I saw that you tend to speak on, and I was going to just go through each of them. If you can just give me a little summary of each one.
Hmm.
The first one is called "It Used to Be Drama and Now It's Trauma."
Hmm. So that one is more aimed at teens,
Okay.
because again, you know, a lot of times people just looked at the teen issue as, oh, they're being dramatic, but now we're finding more and more of these kids have unacknowledged trauma. One of them, a big piece of it being because of pornography, and so relationship, sexual or an inability to form proper relationships, an ill-formed human sexuality, either one because the topic wasn't brought up or things. And when I go out and talk to parent groups too, I say, listen, the birds and the bees, the talk, get rid of it. It has to be a constant conversation that happens. So again, we talk about our partners. Defend Young Minds, they have a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. It's aimed at kindergartners because at kindergarten they have to know, again, remember the average age is 8 9 years old. For it to be an average there has to be moments younger. And for those kids, if they see a bad picture, they have to know that there's a safe place to go in parents and in adults who care about them to be able to bring that truth, or to be able to bring that experience so that they can be guided through a healthy integration of their human sexuality and their emotional maturity over the course of time. So when we talk about, it's not these kids being dramatic. Some of the ways in which they're having outbursts and stuff like
Mhm.
that is because they've experienced serious trauma, and we need to
Mhm.
get that helped so that they can go on to live good relationships and have an integrated life.
So when you say drama, like what you're just saying, like a child that seems to have like more dramatic like
Again, people used to
characteristics.
really here's a perfect one. So I remind this to teachers all the time. I'm like, you know what? It used to be that if a kid started to slack in doing their homework or their schoolwork or something like that or test grades, they're just being lazy, they're going through a funk.
Mm,
We can't live in that world anymore. We have to sit there
right.
and get the school psychologist in and to figure out, is there divorce going on at home? Was there some type of, abuse? Was there something connected to pornography? What is it that has caused this
Hmm.
child to take this turn? All the things with mental health. So again, we can't just say, oh, it's they're being dramatic or
Hmm.
they're being, overly this or overly. No, 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 no.
Okay.
We actually have to sit down and
Or it
talk
could
about
be a
this,
bully. Like, why is somebody all of a sudden like bullying and maybe
which is
they've been
trauma.
exposed to it? Yeah. And the other thing is it could be a child actually could be being mistreated by their own parents, and
Yep.
the teacher would be the one to be able to see that and seek the help for that. Okay, that's really helpful. The second topic is called porn and the confessional.
Yeah. So this is, I've been blessed to go out to a number of dioceses, not as many as I would have liked to, but we're getting there. Well, they're coming slowly, but it's an opportunity to be able to bring the truth about helping priests to be better, pastors of souls and confessors. But also to at the same time to be able to show how sometimes we talk about ritual that leads people to acting out, that actually confession can become part of a person's ritual because they rationalize that I can act out, I can sin, I can get to confession, nobody will know. So it becomes the secret. And I think that that's one of
Mm,
the things that Satan continues to do is he continues to keep this thing about this discussion about our sexuality, our sexual integration, as the secret or something that we don't talk about so that he can continue to manipulate that. I'm
mm,
not telling us to be completely out of control, but again, like I said, I go around the world talking about this, and I don't get calls about, something's wrong with this guy, tell him to stop talking about this, that, and the other thing, regarding sexuality. No, they say thank you. They say thank you. Finally, someone's had the courage to speak up about this, and I think
hmm.
that that's where, again, empowering our priest in the confessional is the first point of contact, teaching them how to bring that person to the pastoral counseling office to get them the resources that they need to find hope and healing is very essential. So that is
Okay.
a clergy training tool, but also then to teach them how to, reach out to their people.
It's interesting because I saw a trailer for Padre Pio,
Hmm.
and it was I want to say it was like a prostitute or somebody that kept coming into the confessional, and they show a scene where he's actually like yelling. I don't know if you've seen that at all.
Is that the one with Shia LaBeouf playing
Yes,
Padre Pio? Yes.
yes.
Yeah. And it's
And
just this battle against evil.
yes, and I remember seeing that film and or that trailer and trying to make sense of, I mean, I could see like his anger was coming kind of from what you're saying. It was like just part of a ritual of doing the same thing over and over again with really no intention to change.
Hmm.
And so, and Pache Pio, from what I understand, he felt very deeply the sins of his people, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, now as I'm talking to you, it's making more sense, that
Hmm.
scene,
Hmm.
and how that can become a ritual for people, and almost like a kind of a twisted kind of I don't want to say high, but like you never know. There's so many different components that happen to people when they become obsessed or addicted with certain things that,
And you get desensitized as well. So
yeah,
again, we
yeah.
talk about ritual busting or just ritual change and changing the this just cycle that you get caught into, and that becomes so important because once you pull something out of that, that machine of addiction, that machine of use of habit can't run like it used to, and
Hmm.
that disruption can really be a huge moment of change for a person.
Yeah, like even from the things that you've told me already, like if a priest responded and maybe for their penance or whatever, it would be to pray for their wife or to think of somebody else. Like just a little bit of a different turn might be something that makes them think differently or seeking help or whatever.
Sure.
I'm just kind of brainstorming, but
Yeah.
yeah. The third topic is called Let the Children Come to Me.
Hmm. Yeah, that is a whole piece of just making sure that we're doing the right things to protect our kids. And, from having that long-term conversation that happens so that there is solid just integration, sexual integration, all of those things, virtue integration in a child's life. but also, to make sure that adults are taking on their role of making sure that, there's cybersecurity protections on devices. I'm a huge techie, I'm
Hmm.
all about it, but I'm not anti-internet or anti-device. But I
Hmm.
think also there has to be responsibility.
Hmm.
I very much try to challenge parents away from the whole complete stripping of a child having exposure to technology and devices. Again, moderation is important, but at the same time, the more and more technology is going to be something that is part of our life forever. We're never going to go
Hmm.
back to a time where there isn't technology. And so
Hmm.
teaching a child technological responsibility,
Hmm.
technological prudence is important because the more that they're desensitized to it, the more they have the opportunity to get punched in the face by it when they get out on their own and they don't have
Hmm.
the protections of a family that cares about them, right there next to them, teaching them
Yeah.
the proper way to use things. So
Yeah.
let we want our children to be happy, wholesome, healthy, but we need to make sure that on every level, on a spiritual level, mental, emotional, physical, that they have the tools to be able to do that. And so
Hmm.
making sure that we're protecting them in this digital age is really crucial.
Yeah. And I know this is a little bit of a side point off the main topic, but from what we've talked about, it is very scary and there's so much out there, but there is hope for people.
Oh,
You've
100%.
been able to help people find the resources that they need and help families and relationships heal and things like that. I mean, it sounds like I know that they used to like say, and just like as a nurse, it's like a lot of times people that are more vulnerable are at more risk of being taken advantage of. So like if the family's not really providing the care that they need, they can be seen sometimes as more vulnerable than to perpetrators and things like that. So it's
Hmm.
kind of the same thing. It's like being aware, taking care of your kids, but now it's in a different way of technologically.
Yeah.
Um, but there also is hope and there is help out there for people that maybe think there might be a problem, but they don't know if they should, look into it or if it's at that point yet, or are they really going to be able to help us? But yes, there is help out there.
Absolutely.
Okay. And our faith is really all about healing and, being transformed in our faith. So, I guess I just want to really emphasize that to our listeners.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we're in this work of healing, and it's so
yeah.
important because the Lord wants our hearts to be healed because once they are, that's when we can be in closest union with Him. All of
Hmm.
these excuses that we make away from this stuff, all it's doing is allowing Satan to create a barrier and a wedge between us and the Lord, and it drives it
Yeah.
deeper and deeper and deeper. So we're trying to heal that divide so that people can be deeply rooted in that relationship with the Lord.
Do you feel like in the 10 years you've been doing it, are you seeing more significant improvement because of all this outreach and all these different resources? Do you see that end of it, or are you more at the end of the educating aspect of it?
No, I think that we are making progress. It's
Hmm.
slow, and you have to, stay steady in again quality over quantity.
Hmm.
But I think the bigger thing that gets me frustrated is that when, the case has been presented and people who should be able to easily say, "Wow, you know what? We need to do more about this," they're not. And
Hmm.
again, that this may make me have less friends, but when our clergy, our priests and bishops don't respond to this issue, all of these other, holy things that we want to achieve, we're not acknowledging the elephant in the room that is
Hmm.
holding people back from this. And again, it's not just the issue of pornography, but it's about the sexual revolution and the lack of understanding that we have about the gift of our human sexuality and
Hmm.
how important it is to make sure that that is a part of the conversation in
Hmm.
what we're helping our people to see the beautiful light of God's truth.
Yeah, and it's something very sacred that God created in us that needs to be protected.
Amen.
Yeah, so the fourth topic is called pornography. It's not just about the user.
Yeah, and that gets into the whole piece of the betrayal trauma. And again, that betrayal trauma can come up in a way where you have, when parents find out about their child using pornography, betrayal trauma. When a child finds out about their parent using pornography, betrayal trauma.
Hmm.
A significant other, a fiance, a spouse. There's a number of different ways, and so I think that sometimes because we do make a big thing about the actual pornography itself and the person using pornography, there is a very sensitive heart to the persons who are affected by the user's use. And we need to
Yeah.
make sure that, again, pastors of souls and people of goodwill are also attuned to this and able to respond to it in such a way that you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to have the solution, but to at least be able to know where to guide people is really crucial.
Awesome. Okay. And then the last one, the last topic that you do discuss is called arming yourself for battle.
Yeah, yeah. I always say, we talked earlier about me being the football player, and I had the blessing of speaking to the youth ministers out at NCYC, the National Catholic Youth Conference in Indianapolis, back in November. And I said to them, listen, I said devil doesn't like it when they see this 6'4", 370-pound lineman coming in his direction, because God's lineman is a coming for him, and he's scared. I think, and the big thing is the arming ourselves with battle is arming ourselves with truth.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest thing, not with opinions, not with, the moral relativism, but with the truth. And this is truth that is, has been present to us in the incarnational realities of Jesus Christ. Going back to, again, John Paul's theology of the body gives us a great framework for going back to Adam and Eve and what was intended for man, and how that was distorted by sin, and Satan's been in the work of distortion ever since. God has been reaching out with clarity and love ever since, and it's comes down to a daily choice of whether people are going to choose good or evil. And that's what it
Hmm.
comes down to, God or the devil. I always love
Hmm.
that little device. I was at a youth retreat once, and I said to the kids, I said, okay, so this is how you remember that God adds and the devil takes away. And I said, devil takes away. So what happens when he subtracts? So what happens when you subtract the D from devil? You get what? Evil. Good. I said, and what happens when you add an O to God? And one kid raises his hand really emphatically, and he goes, "Goddo." I said, no. I said, move the O over one. Oh, good. Yeah, 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 yeah. Good. God adds good. Yes, yes, he does. So I think, arming ourselves with truth, is important. And it is a battle because
Hmm.
Satan's going to continue to try and manipulate and steer people in the wrong direction. But we are blessed in
Hmm.
the fact that we have the grace of God in the sacraments. The sacramental life of the church is important. The spiritual life, which leads us to deeper relationship and shows us what real relationship is. And also, in addition to that, the gift of the doctrine of our faith and the scriptures to be able to show us more and more that Jesus gives us everything that we need and how to live this beautiful life that he's given to us. We just need to
Hmm.
choose to live it that way every single day.
Yeah, and I think another thing I want to kind of like reinforce is that you're not bringing this attention to condemn people. You're coming to bring healing. You want to bring healing
Oh yeah,
to
no,
everyone involved.
never once. I've had to sometimes with people, especially with some guys who try to, who think they're going to come in and try to convince me that, porn's fine, and
Hmm.
it's not really hurting anybody. We have
Hmm.
to rough them up a little bit.
Yeah.
We have to give them a little bit of a dry block.
Yeah.
But no, there has been never no judgment or anything like that. And
Yeah.
again, to the sinner or the one affected by the sin, there is compassion and mercy. There's
Hmm.
also justice and truth,
Yeah.
but it comes from a place of, of course, I know those of us who work in this work, being nasty and mean, and again that punitive wagging finger, that's not going to do any good.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean all anyone involved in it really is it, to some degree is a victim of it.
Yeah.
I mean, people make choices, but they don't make choices realizing where it's going to take them, and we're all imperfect. So, I'm just thinking of somebody that maybe isn't in the depths of suffering with this addiction or in family or whatever. just really encouraging them to get the help that they need because there is so much healing and restoration to be had. Father, so I usually ask a question at the end. I'm going to ask you two questions, though.
Okay.
The first one is if you could share words of wisdom, encouragement, or support with anyone engaging in or affected by pornography right now.
There's hope for you.
Okay.
There's hope for you. This is not a struggle that you fight on your own. This is not a battle that you have to fight in silence or in fear or embarrassment. And I think, especially in this Lenten season, this is the big thing. And I've shared this a lot, and it's changed a lot of people's lives. There's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is a good thing. Guilt is about what we've done, where shame is about who we are. Feeling
Mm-hmm.
guilt about what we've done drives us to restoration.
Mm-hmm.
But shame is a tool of the evil one. God is not a God of shame. We should never shame other people, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to feel shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because shame, the devil uses that to distort our personhood so that we actually think less than who we are, less of who we are, and we no longer think that we're beloved sons and daughters of the Father. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a tool of Satan. And so my encouragement is to all persons to, again, let guilt drive you to restoration. But if you're feeling shame over this pornography use, over abuse, over some type of sexual misuse, what I would ask you to do is to tell Satan that his lies are no longer a part of your life and
Mm-hmm.
seek the restoration that is found in Christ.
Awesome. Okay. And then the last question is any words of advice for parents, grandparents, or lay people in regard to pornography and how to protect um, their loved ones or our loved ones.
Yeah, be courageous. Be courageous, and we do so many things. It really bothers me when people say they're going to let their child pick their faith when they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Like parents from day one, are charged with giving their children the best of everything as is humanly possible, and they want to. Why
Mm-hmm.
would we not give a child the grace of God and the encounter with the grace of God from their infancy? And why would we not protect them from the greatest threat and the greatest drug that is out there in the world in which we live today, which is pornography?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have been blessed in that people have called me. How do I talk to my child about this? How do I talk to my child about that? That's the work that we do. That's all part of it. Not
I
be
love that.
embarrassed. Not to be embarrassed because there's tons of people who are struggling with that question of what do I say? Again, here's the thing. Go to scripture. When you are before the judgments of the world, do not be concerned with what you are to say or do. The Spirit, the advocate who I will send you, will be there to assist you. And again, our relationship with the Holy Spirit is important, but also God sends through the church people like myself. I'm not the only one, but many
Mm-hmm.
people like myself to be able to help others to be able to have the words to say, the things to do in those very crucial moments so that it may be a defining moment for the health and wellness on every level, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, for their child, and by extension, for everyone around them.
Wonderful. Father, thank you so much. This was a wonderful, very informative, very important conversation. I can't wait to share it with listeners, and I hope that they share it with others too.
Please do, and please spread the good word about Integrity Restored, the Lumen Christi Commission, and all of the other partners that I've shared and talked about in this great ministry that we've been called to do, and that we do with the blessing of God and with the strength that comes from God and against the evil one and his lies.
Awesome. And I will include your introduction, which includes all of that in the show notes for people that they can look to. So, Father, thank you so much. Have a truly blessed day and a wonderful Lent and Easter coming.
And the same to you. Thanks so much,
Thank
Cathy
you.
Jo.
Thank you. You're welcome.